What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of State of the Steelers. I'm your Still Current Network host, Daniel J. And today we're talking about the winners and losers of minicamp. You know, there's not much winning and losing you can do in minicamp. It's football in shorts, but we're going to try to and attempt to talk about those players that maybe perhaps took a step forward, some that maybe not so much took a step back, but maybe stayed the same or are a cause of concern or should be concerned. And so, like, comment, subscribe, share. You guys know what to do. With all that said, let's get into it. We're going to start off with the winners. Now, the first winner of minicamp that I'm going to throw out there, I think is the most obvious, and I think that's going to be Aaron Rodgers. Signed his deal. He is now a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He is now in the building. He is participating. And one of the things that I like about this is the fact that I know he got a lot of flack for not, being there for voluntary OTAs and things of that nature, but I think it would have been more of a distraction had he signed and not been there. Now, I get it. Some players signed and weren't there, such as DK Metcalf and some other players as well. But Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. Everybody was already talking about how there was 31 other quarterbacks in OTAs except for Aaron Rodgers. And, they were just kind of looking for anything to criticize the man, to be 110% honest with you. And at the end of the day, what he missed was voluntary. To me, I thought that he was actually going to miss part of the regular, mandatory mini camp that just occurred, because what was the point of not signing then? But, he goes and he meets with the team from all indications. He goes, meets with the team. He talks with the team, tells him he's all in. And basically that tells me the reason why he didn't sign is because he wasn't going to be there. But I do think there was a little wink, wink handshake deal in place with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Aaron Rodgers for a while now. And he kind of mentioned that in his press conference. He talked about how it was the Steelers or he wasn't going to play football, and that, he decided to come to the Pittsburgh Steelers because of Mike Tomlin and their relationship. And, because of that, Mike's been able to bring a few players. But, another thing that is a reason for this as a win is because Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to do the same thing. Last season, the Steelers were interested in Devontae Adams. They wanted him. He ended up going to the Jets, a team that was performing less or not as well as the Pittsburgh Steelers at the time, because of Aaron Rodgers and the potential that they could end up being something because of what they've had together in the past. And so there is some sort of effect there, at least when it comes to attracting players. But what Aaron also does is I think he elevates the rest of the players. So this is a win for the wide receiver group to finally have their quarterback that they're going to be playing with this year in the building. It's a win for everybody. The offensive coordinator can now focus the game plan strictly around Aaron Rodgers. Not saying that they weren't. I'm sure that the game plan that they were running up into this point, which is not very much. Remember, this is basically drills and stuff. Now, I do know that they're probably going to be implementing some things, concepts, basic concepts, those type of things of what they're going to want to run. And I'm sure it was probably more tailor-made to what Aaron Rodgers likes, even beforehand, just to get the wide receivers there. But Aaron is going to elevate the players around him. I think he's going to elevate the wide receivers around him. That's a win for them. But one other thing, just to kind of go back to Aaron Rodgers, one thing that I've noticed that I've heard a lot of people talk about is the zip on the ball. That the guy can really, really put it into a spot, and it gets there quick. Some people are talking about that it's whistling as it's traveling through the air, and that's something that hasn't been heard for quite a while. And so, I saw a clip where I think it was Mason Rudolph who was throwing to DK Metcalf, and Mason throws the ball, and DK jumps up to catch the ball. He really didn't have to. But you can tell that the reason why he did it is because he's expecting the ball there. He'd been working out with Aaron Rodgers. So he's more comfortable that when he turns around, the ball is going to be there. And that's the difference right there when it comes to Aaron Rodgers and any other quarterback that's on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster right now, is the arm talent, the ability to get the ball there, even at his age. And, seeing the timing that he's already made with DK Metcalf on some of these throws in some of these routes. Again, these are routes that DK turned and he jumped up, waiting for the ball to get there. It seems like the ball would have gone there with much more velocity if it was Aaron Rodgers, and that's why DK jumped up, right? Well, anyways, you don't have that anticipation if you've not been running that route a lot, right? Now, I know that they worked out together and they worked out in California, But this tells me that the routes that they're running in practice were the same ones that they were running out there, and which they're not complicated routes. Everybody runs the same ones, right? But for that muscle memory to be there, that must be a route that they ran consistently over and over and over again. And it's the same ones that are the Steelers are focusing on. So that just kind of tells you and me that the game plan or the focus point on the concepts are the ones that Aaron Rodgers are comfortable with up to this point. So they've known for a while. They've known for a while. As far as the next player that I think is who's a winner in mini camp is Darnell Washington. I've heard a lot of good things about him. He's lost some weight. He talked about himself wanting to be more involved in the passing game. Aaron Rodgers talked about him being a Mercedes Lewis and about the same size and stuff like that, except Darnell's a much better blocker and a physical guy. And so if Darnell can take that next step and be that pass catching guy, and I mean, he doesn't have to be, Tony Gonzalez out there. He just has to be a guy that can block out and catch the ball. He doesn't need to have the hips, and because I've heard people talking about how he's a little stiff, especially in turning and doing the route running isn't the best. Well, what is his best? His best is his physical abilities. So get him in an area where he can box out some other smaller individuals and just throw the ball up and let him go up there and catch it, especially if you have to get a few yards. And shoot, I wouldn't, if he can take a snap, the tush push didn't get dropped, I'd put him back there as quarterback on those situations when you need a short yard and let the big man go down and get that. But Darnell Washington is another winner, in my opinion. Will Howard, I hate to jump back and forth between positions, but I should have mentioned Will first. Will, to me, is another winner here. And the reason behind that is because he gets to sit behind Aaron Rodgers. He gets to see him, but all indications are he's looking really, really good. Very accurate, very, poised, confident. He had a bad day the first day from all indications and then has bounced back since. And so he's overcome some adversity. Obviously, it's not a lot. It's football in shorts. But he's overcome some adversity and it didn't spiral downhill. And so, a lot of good things coming out of camp about Will Howard. I like it. Calvin Austin is my next winner here. And the reason behind that is because Coach Azani stated that he's wide receiver 2. Everybody looks down upon him. Apparently, he's doing very well. He's a guy that even Sauce Gardner talked about coming out of college as being the toughest wide receiver that he's ever had to play against. Calvin's had to work on his route running. He's been more of a just a speed guy. Early on in his career last year, I thought he did better. I thought he took a step forward in the route running department. 1 year after the, well, I digress. Because the first year he was injured, right? And then next year, so it's 1 year after the full recovery of the injury. And then now this year, he really needs to take another step forward if he wants to be that wide receiver too. I personally think that the Steelers are going to go out and get another wide receiver. I would feel more confident and comfortable with this offense if they did. Before they traded George Pickens, I was super excited with the thought of GP on one side, DK on the other, and Aaron Rodgers back there. Once George Pickens was out of the equation, I was a little bit down about it. I was even so down, I was like, man, what's the point of getting Rodgers? But if they can bring in somebody of a similar caliber, they don't have to be George Pickens. They don't have to be somebody like that, but they have to be, a solid wide receiver too, not this question mark that the Steelers have. And the reason I say that is because Arthur Smith doesn't really incorporate wide receiver too much. So you don't need a superstar diva out there, wanting the ball all the time and upset because they're not getting the ball because the tight ends are getting more targets or, wide receiver 1 is getting more targets, etc. And so you don't need a diva wide receiver, but you do need, I think, in my opinion, a more solid person out there. Somebody that can handle somewhat the load in case, DK goes down for a game or two or something. You know what I'm saying? So, but at this point, all indication coming out of training camp was that Calvin Austin did really, really well. And so I think he's got a talent, it kind of goes back to Aaron Rodgers and the quarterbacks that the Steelers have had. Calvin Austin is a really speedy guy. So is it possible that some of these quarterbacks just couldn't get him the ball in the past? Maybe, maybe so. Well, I'm going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to talk more about some winners, this time on defense. And then we have a couple losers. It's not too many, but there are a couple. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a few words from our sponsors. What is up? Welcome back, everybody, to the show. Hope everybody had a good time. Before we get back into the content, I want to remind you guys of our website, stillcurrentnetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Go check it out. You can check out, become part of the conversation. I'm sorry, guys. I just kind of blinked out there. Become part of the conversation. Go log in, create a profile, go check out all the articles, up to the minute breaking news, and get in the conversation, guys. There's a lot of comments on all the articles that you can go in there and talk. Sometimes I'm in there, many times the editor or the author of the article are in there answering your questions about the article. So it's a really in-depth and intuitive website. So you won't be disappointed. Go check it out and tell all your friends about it. All right, back into the conversation. So when it comes to the winners here, I have three more, and I'm going to go to the defensive side. The first one I'm going to call out is Minkah Fitzpatrick as a winner. And the reason being is I've heard that this guy looks like Minkah of old. So the last few years, the turnovers have been down for Minkah. He's had some injuries, and I think he's been playing out of position and having to worry about other players. There have been times where he was used because the other safety was down. Steelers had an issue there with the injury bug for a while when it came to the safety position, and Minkah was used more like a strong safety and in the box, making tackles and things of that nature, where you kind of want him out there, back there, just kind of, and watching the quarterback and making plays. You want that strong safety, that Ryan Clark type safety to be like your Sean Elliott or even Juan Thornhill. Those kind of guys, which I've heard a lot about Thornhill being looking really good this year as well. He took a shot at his former team, the Browns, so that was awesome as well. But Minkah Fitzpatrick, from all indications, looked like he's back, guys. And I think it's for a few reasons. I think he's back in his normal position, back where he wants to be, back where he's most effective and a playmaker. And I also think that they're going to utilize him a little bit less to cover for the issues of the other parts of the defense. So, for instance, last year, I think that Beanie Bishop, especially early on in the season, had some issues learning the defense. It was multiple players on the defense talked about how making it more simple would probably be better, things of that nature, just because I think they felt that there was even the talk like one player out of position, and some people thought it was Beanie, some people thought it was Cam Sutton. Either way, Minkah was trying to, or had to, kind of overcome their shortcomings, so to speak, while still having to deal with his own details of his own work. And so, this year, if he doesn't have to be so much on top of that slot corner, whether it's Beanie or Cam or whoever, if they can hold their own and they can, and they can earn that trust from the other players of the defense, such as Minkah Fitzpatrick, that they're going to be in the area and the position that they need to be in the right place. That'll allow them to work more freely within their own detail of their own work. And I think that's going to play a huge role. If the defense can do that, it's going to be a good year for this team. We can expect, injury and TJ Watt coming back have to be a big part of it. They're a big part of that. If TJ's not back, then, it's it'll be difficult. The Steelers' record isn't very high without TJ. Nick Herbig's good, but he's not the best as far as, sealing the edge out there, when it comes to the running game. And Alex Highsmith is capable, but, having both out there is what you want. And, the additions to the defensive line I really do think that this defense has the ability to be, that defense that they were back in like 2019, 2020, 2021, where they were really, really good. Last couple of years, especially down the line, the defense is kind of, whether because of fatigue, tired, injury, whatever the case may be, they've kind of dwindled down the line. And I think this year, if the offense can put up, their end of the bargain, if they can hold their end of the bargain, I think that the defense will do okay. The next winner I have is Derek Carmen, talking about the front end. I've heard a lot of good things about him. He's been already deemed the starting left defensive end or defensive tackle. I apologize. So he's there. He's going to be on the opposite end of Cam Hayward. He's going to be the first team guy, starter. No surprise. I mean, he's the first round pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers in this draft. So you would expect your first rounders to get out there and be a part of the team. Now, I think this is an interesting approach because the Steelers, especially of recent, it didn't matter what position, they really didn't throw out the first round pick as a starter right away. Whether it was Fautanu last year or Broderick Jones the year before, the first round, or even Frazier, none of these guys were given the starting job right away. Now, I was very critical about this. I understood why you want them to earn it and things of that nature. But in this game, there's only so much time that you have with your starters that you want out there. You want to build that chemistry, and you rather build that chemistry when the games don't count. For instance, if you're taking some time to build that chemistry, and let's just say your goal is that they're going to start week 1 regardless, right? Or obviously if they poop the bed, they may not. But if they're decent enough or they're good enough, you're going to start them, but you want them to earn it. And so you don't start giving them first team reps until 2 weeks before the first game. You let them take the first or at least the majority of the first team reps. Well, then now you're in your first game, and now they're learning each other during the regular season. And I don't think that's a smart idea. I think if you want them to be ready as can be come week 1, you need to get them in the position that you want them to play and the position that you're expecting them to play. And if they're going to be a large contributor, you got to get them the reps, put them out there. And I like this approach. I think this is a different approach than what the Pittsburgh Steelers have been doing as of recent. And it's a good approach in my opinion. But yeah, Derek Harmon, winner here. And the last winner I want to talk about is going to be Cole Holcomb. I mean, the guy looks like he's ready to come back. Obviously he's ready to come back. I think he even mentioned that he would have been ready last year, but the Steelers didn't really need him at that point at the end of the season, but he's ready now. The Steelers can now implement him. If he can be anything like he was, he would be a very healthy rotation for the inside linebacker position. He is a green dot guy. He can handle those obligations. I think the Steelers are excited about Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen and what they can do. And so I don't think he's going to unseat anybody, but I do think that he's going to be that healthy third linebacker in a heavy rotation with these guys, especially if any of them are struggling with anything. I think you have an option to put them in there, put Cole Holcomb in. He looks bigger, he looks thicker, he's worked out a lot, he looks jacked. Saw him running around out there on some clips. He looks like he's got his speed back. I'd be interesting to see how he plays in preseason and what kind of effect he can have out there. And it's one thing to play out there in shorts and a shirt, right? It's another thing to be, in a contact sport. And with such a serious injury that he had, you really want to make sure that mentally he's able to do it too, with the bodies flying around, the helmet, the pads, etc. You know what I'm saying? All right, let's transition to some of the losers, which I don't think there's very many, but there are some. I'm going to start off with TJ Watt. TJ Watt is not a loser by anybody's means, but in this sense, I'm going to say he lost because he's not there. That's just it. I think in the end, he'll end up winning a very big contract and he'll be there at some point in training camp. I hope he's there for all of it, even if he's holding in. I hope that's at least what he does. I think the contract's going to get done. I really do. I really hope the Steelers should do it. He's a Steelers' best player. If they restructure his deal and restructure the deals that they can, they still have a tremendous amount of money that they can massage out of the cap so they can go do some things. So it's not about the money. Um, and I hope they can. I hope they can come to that agreement. The next one is going to be. Let's start off with the. Well, since we're on defense, Let's stay on defense this time. There's only one other defensive player that I'm putting in here as a loser, which I don't think they're a loser, but the next one's going to be Keanu Benton, and the reason being is he's not the starting left defensive tackle anymore. It's now Derek Harmon. He's been unseated. He's going to be heavily involved. I think he's lost some weight and he looks good, but he's going to be a heavily involved rotation wise, but I don't think he's going to be the starter anymore. I think that's going to be Derek Harmon. His weight loss and his body transformation tells me he's not going to be somebody that you're going to see a lot in the nose. So that's going to be Wyatt Blacks. I probably should have put him as a winner just solely on that aspect, but I digress. So Wyatt Black's probably going to be your nose. He's he's a big guy. He's a mountain of a man. That's who you want there. If he can, do what he needs to do, I think he'll be really good. I'll be honest, man. The guy looks like a young, to me at least, he looks like a young Mean Joe Green. He don't. From all indications, he doesn't seem like a very mean guy though. But appearance wise, looks like Mean Joe to me. Well, I digress. He's going to be your guy in the middle. He can play ugly and nasty and whatnot, and that's what you want from him. I think he's a great pickup. This defensive line's great, but there are going to be some players who have to now take a back seat. Keanu Benton, he's going to be heavily involved, but he's going to take a back seat. You can probably put in some of the other defensive linemen there too. Loudermilk, he came back. He's looking good, but with so many young guys now, how much playing time is he going to see? He wasn't getting a helmet every game last year. So, food for thought there. Logan Lee is another guy that the Steelers drafted last year. Was a little bit undersized, especially now compared to some of these other guys. He's going to have to really. I haven't seen him, so I don't know. I think I've heard he's bulked up, but I haven't seen him. But he's really going to have to put it out there to make this roster enduring training camp if he wants to be a member of the Steelers too, because these guys are massive human beings. So defensive line outside of those guys, not losers, but taking a back step. The next guy I'm going to talk about is Mason Rudolph. Now, Mason didn't do anything to be a loser here, but again, the rug pulled out of under him. He is not the starting quarterback, which I think he was aware of it. He understood. I think he knew. I think everybody knew that Aaron Rodgers was coming and he was going to be his backup. And so, he got a contract that is a backup's contract. And, in a sense, he knows that he's one play away. Right, he's just one play away of getting in there, which is a lot closer than he was in the past when he got in there in 2023. He was the third string quarterback then. They had a first round, guy there, and they had another guy that they picked up in free agency. And so, there was a lot of hurdles and hoops that he had to go through, even though he was the best quarterback on the roster then. So he understands that aspect. His business is business too, but he's one play away. He's a lot closer than he was before. Again, he's closer. And the person he's backing up is 41, going to be 42 this year. So if the Steelers play their hand right and their cards right, there's a good chance that maybe perhaps Aaron Rodgers gets, he takes a break at the end of the season, maybe the last game, just to give him a little bye or whatever the case may be. And you may see Mason come in for a game or two this season. And for that, he's a winner. But right now, back up, a lot of talk about the rookie, a lot of talk about the guy in front of him, not much talk about Mason Rudolph. The next one I want to talk about, and the last one that we're going to talk about is going to be, not the last one. There's two more. So the next one's going to be Roman Wilson. I heard a lot of good things about Roman Wilson, but the last day of training camp, Al Saunders had reported that there was a little bit of regression. He had looked kind of bad, dropped 4 passes, just wasn't himself. Hopefully it was just a bad day. But when you only have a few amount of practices, one bad day out of only 3, that's a third of your practice that ends up, a third of the practice sessions. That's not good. So you have to make these count, especially if you're fighting for wide receiver too. You can't have a bad day. And so hopefully that's all it was, and he'll come back stronger for training camp. And the last person which again, I don't really think he's a loser. I think he just got married or engaged, so he's probably should be a winner. But that's going to be Pat Fryermuth. Now, the only reason that I'm calling him a loser is because the Steelers have been in talks with several teams about a pass catching tight end. Now, Arthur Smith likes to incorporate more than one tight end in the passing game. Um, it's That's been his thing, and Darnell Washington really isn't the most pass catching guy out there, but there's been a lot of conversation about Darnell Washington and being a pass catcher, whether it be from the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers or whoever, and even talking to him and how he wanted to make that a bigger part of his game. So interesting that they're looking at some pass catching tight end options. Pat has had some injury history in his career, some concussion history in his career, and uh, I don't know if he's played a full season yet, but uh, so maybe perhaps that's another reason why, or another avenue why the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking at other options at the tight end position for as a passing option, because they understand that they want to utilize and incorporate the tight end in this offense, which means that you're probably going to see a lot more of the middle of the field throws, which we haven't seen, which would be a breath of fresh air for this team. But you know, maybe there's a concern about longevity and health throughout the entire season. And if Pat were to go down and he's your only passing option, because yeah, obviously you have Connor Hayward, but Connor's on the lighter side. He's small and short. Um, he's more of a tweener between a fullback and a tight end than a dedicated tight end. And so if Pat were to go down for a game or two, you'd have to really, really adjust your game plan. And so I can see why the Steelers are going out there and looking for another option at the tight end position. But they're looking at some pretty big names in Jonas Smith and Kyle Pitts. These are guys that, Jonas Smith was a Pro Bowler, I believe, last year, and Kyle Pitts was a first round draft pick. I don't know if he's lived up to that grade, but he's a first round draft pick with a lot of talent and hasn't really had the quarterbacks around him, which is an excuse, obviously, but maybe perhaps he would garnish more. He would garnish quite a bit if the Steelers were going to try to trade for him, for either one of them, and then a paycheck on top of it. Yeah, I think if you're Pat Fryermuth, you might be a little bit worried about the amount of targets you might get, or being tight end one. Because I mean, some of these guys can't be tight end one, especially like if you get a Kyle Pitts, he could be your first targeted tight end versus Pat Fryermuth. You know what I'm saying? But that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, share, comment, subscribe. You guys know what to do. Until next time, peace.